The book of Esther, chapter 7, verse 1. Esther 7 and 1. Esther, the seventh chapter and the first verse. Haman is hanged. So the king and Haman went to eat with Queen Esther. Then, as they were drinking wine on the second day of the party, the king again asked Esther a question. Queen Esther, what is it you want to ask for? Ask anything and it will be given to you. What do you want? I'll give you anything, even half my kingdom. Then Queen Esther answered, King, if you like me and it pleases you, please let me live. And I ask you to let my people live too. This is what I asked for. I asked this because my people and I have been sold to be destroyed, to be killed and wiped out completely. If we had just been sold as slaves, I would have been quiet because that would be enough of a problem to bother the king. Would not be enough. Then King Xerxes asked Queen Esther, who did this to you? Where is the man who dared to do such a thing to your people? Esther said, the man against us, our enemy, is this wicked Haman. Then Haman was filled with terror before the king and queen. The king was very angry. He got up, left his wine, and went out into the garden. But Haman stayed inside to beg Queen Esther to save his life. He begged for his life because he knew that the king had already decided to kill him. Just as the king was coming back in from the garden to the party room, he saw Haman falling on the couch where Esther was lying. The king said with anger in his voice, will you attack the queen while I'm in the house? As soon as the king had said this, servants came in and killed Haman. One of the eunuchs who had served the king was named Harbona. He said, a hanging post 75 feet tall has been built near Haman's house. Haman made it so he could hang Mordecai on it. Mordecai is the man who helped you when he told about the evil plans to kill you. The king said, hang Haman on that post. So they hanged Haman on the hanging post he had built for Mordecai. Then the king stopped being angry. Esther 8. The king's order to help the Jews. That same day, King Xerxes gave Queen Esther everything that belonged to Haman, the enemy of the Jews. Esther told the king that Mordecai was her cousin. Then Mordecai came to see the king. The king had gotten his ring back from Haman. The king took the ring off his finger and gave it to Mordecai. Then Esther put Mordecai in charge of everything that belonged to Haman. Then Esther spoke to the king again. She fell at the king's feet and began crying. She begged the king to cancel the evil plan of Haman the Agagite. Haman had thought up the plan to hurt the Jews. Then the king held out the gold scepter to Esther. Esther got up and stood in front of the king and said, King, if you like me and if it pleases you, please do this for me. Please do this if you think it's a good idea. If the king is happy with me, please write a command that would stop the command Haman sent out. Haman the Agagite thought of a plan to destroy the Jews in all the king's provinces. And he sent out commands for this to happen. I'm begging the king because I could not bear to see these terrible things happen to my people. I cannot bear to see my family killed. King Xerxes answered Queen Esther and Mordecai the Jew, because Haman was against the Jews, I've given his property to Esther, and my soldiers have hanged him on the hanging post. Now write another command by the authority of the king. Write it to help the Jews in any way that seems best to you. Then seal the order with the king's special ring. No official letter written by the authority of the king and sealed with the king's ring can be canceled. Very quickly, the king's secretaries were called. This was done on the 23rd day of the third month, the month of Sivan. They wrote out all of Mordecai's commands to the Jews and to the satraps, governors, officials of the 127 provinces. These provinces reached from India to Ethiopia. The commands were written in the language of each province and translated into the language of each group of people. The commands were written to the Jews in their own language and alphabet. Mordecai wrote commands by the authority of King Xerxes. Then he sealed the letters with the king's ring and sent them by messengers on horses. The messengers rode fast horses, which were raised especially for the king. The king's commands in the letter said this: the Jews in every city have the right to gather together to protect themselves. They have the right to ruin, kill, and completely destroy any army from any group who might attack them and their women and children. And the Jews have the right to take and destroy the property of their enemies. The day set for the Jews to do this was the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar. They were permitted to do this in all the King Xerxes provinces. A copy of the letter with the king's command was to be sent out. It became a law in every province. They announced it to all the people of every nation living in the kingdom. They did this so that the Jews would be ready for that special day. They would be allowed to pay their enemies back. The messengers hurried out riding on the king's horses. The king commanded them to hurry, and the command was also put in the capital of Susa. Mordecai left the king. He was wearing special clothes from the king. His clothes were blue and white, and he had on a large gold crown. He also had a purple robe made of the best linen. There was a special celebration in Susa. The people were very happy. It was an especially happy day for the Jews, a day of great joy and happiness. Wherever the king's command went in every province and every city, there was joy and gladness among the Jews. They were having parties and celebrating. Many of the common people from other groups became Jews. They did this because they were very afraid of the Jews. Esther 9, victory for the Jews. On the 13th day of the 12th month, Adar, the people were supposed to obey the king's command. This was the day the enemies of the Jews hoped to defeat them. But now things had changed. The Jews were stronger than their enemies who hated them. The Jews met together in their cities and all the provinces of King Xerxes so that they would be strong enough to attack the people who wanted to destroy them. No one was strong enough to stand against them. They were afraid of the Jews. And all officials of the provinces, satraps, governors, and king's administrators helped the Jews. All the leaders helped them because they were afraid of Mordecai. Mordecai had become a very important man in the king's palace. Everyone in the provinces knew his name and knew how important he was, and Mordecai became more and more powerful. The Jews defeated all their enemies. They used swords to kill and destroy them. They did what they wanted to the people who hated them. They killed and destroyed 500 men in the capital city of Susa, and also killed these men: Parshamadatta, Dalphon, Asapha, Paratha, Adalia, Aridatha, Parmashta, Arasai, Aradai, and Vasatha. These men were the 10 sons of Haman. Wow. Haman, son of Hammedatha, was the enemy of the Jews. The Jews killed all the men, but they didn't take anything that belonged to them. That day, the king heard how many men had been killed in the capital city of Susa. So the king said to Queen Esther, "The Jews have killed 500 men in Susa, including Haman's 10 sons. Now, what do you want done in the other provinces of the king? Tell me, and I will have it done. Ask, and I will do it." Esther said, "If it pleases the king, please let the Jews in Susa do the same thing again tomorrow. Also, hang the bodies of Haman's 10 sons on posts." So the king gave the command that it should be done. So the law was given in Susa, and they hanged Haman's 10 sons. The Jews in Susa met together on the 14th day of the month of Adar. They killed 300 men in Susa, but they didn't take the things that belonged to them. At the same time, the Jews living in other provinces also met together. They met together so that they would be strong enough to protect themselves. And so they got rid of their enemies. They killed 75,000 of their enemies, but the Jews didn't take anything that belonged to them. This happened on the 13th day of the month Adar. On the 14th day, the Jews rested and made that a happy day of feasting, the festival of Purim. The Jews in Susa had met together on the 13th and 14th days of the month of Adar, and then on the 15th day, they rested. So they made the 15th day a happy day of feasting. So those who live in the country and small villages celebrate Purim on the 14th day of Adar. They keep the 14th day as a happy day of feasting. On this day, they have parties and give presents to each other. Mordecai wrote everything down that had happened, and then he sent letters to all the Jews in all of King Xerxes' provinces. He sent letters far and near. He did this to tell the Jews to celebrate Purim every year on the 14th and 15th days of the month of Adar. They were to celebrate those days because on those days, the Jews got rid of their enemies, and they were also to celebrate that month as the month when their sadness was turned into joy. It was a month when their crying was changed into a day of celebration. Mordecai wrote letters to all the Jews and told them to celebrate those days as a happy day of feasting. They should have parties, give gifts to each other, and give presents to the poor. So the Jews agreed to do what Mordecai had written to them, and they agreed to continue the celebration they had begun. Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, was the enemy of all the Jews. He had made an evil plan against the Jews to destroy them, and had thrown the lot to choose a day to ruin and to destroy the Jews. At that time, the lot was called a Pur. Haman did this, but Esther went to talk to the king. So he sent out new commands. These commands not only ruined Haman's plans, but these commands caused those bad things to happen to Haman and his family. So Haman and his sons were hanged on the posts. At this time, lots were called Purim, so this festival is called Purim. Mordecai wrote a letter and told the Jews to celebrate this festival, and so the Jews started the custom of celebrating these 2 days every year. They do this to help them remember what they had seen happen to them. The Jews and all the people who join them celebrate these 2 days every year at the time in just the right way. Every generation and every family remembers these 2 days. They celebrate this festival in each and every province, in each and every town, and the Jews will never stop celebrating the days of Purim. Their descendants will always remember this festival. So Queen Esther, daughter of Abihail, along with Mordecai the Jew, wrote an official letter about Purim. They wrote with full authority of the king to prove that the second letter was true. So Mordecai sent letters to all the Jews in the 127 provinces of King Xerxes' kingdom. He told the people that the festival should bring peace and make people trust each other. He wrote these letters to tell people to start celebrating Purim, and he told them when to celebrate this new festival. Mordecai the Jew and Queen Esther had sent out the command for the Jews to establish this 2-day festival for themselves and their descendants. They will remember this festival just as they remember the other festivals when they fast and cry about the bad things that had happened. Esther's letter made the rules for Purim official, and these things were written down in a book. Esther 10, Mordecai honored. King Xerxes made people pay taxes. All the people in the kingdom, even the faraway cities on the seacoast, had to pay taxes. And all the great things Xerxes did are written in the book of the history of the kings of Media and Persia. Also written in those history books are all the things Mordecai did. The king made Mordecai a great man. Mordecai the Jew was second in importance to the king Xerxes. He was the most important man among the Jews. His fellow Jews respected him very much because he worked hard for the good of his people and brought peace to all the Jews. This is the word of the Lord in the end of the book of Esther. Please write those words down in the comment section. This is the word of the Lord. Follow, like, share, and subscribe, and encourage others to join in with us as we read through the Bible.